Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Adobe Live. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with my good friend and fantastic designer, Kate Kassab. How are you, Kate?
I'm doing well. How are you, Howard?
I'm doing well. Excited to have you back on Adobe Live. A little bit of a different format this time. Last time we were sitting down in San Francisco. We had sushi, which I'm missing a lot, and now... I know, I haven't had sushi. Actually, I lied. I had sushi not too long ago. It was terrible, but we don't talk about that. Yeah, it's a little bit different this time. We're all remote and we're doing our things from different states and sometimes different countries, but it's exciting to keep these things going throughout this entire pandemic. I'm going to hand it over to you in just a second. I do want to say a big hello to everyone tuning in live today. If you are tuning in on YouTube, head on over to behance.net/Adobe Live so we can see all of your magical faces. We've got Alberto and Sarah and Anurag. If I do mispronounce anyone's name, I apologize. We got Julia, and Kate herself is in the chat. Voodoo Val and Jack, Laura. Great to see everyone. Let us know who you are and where you're tuning in from. So I'm going to hand it over to Kate, but in about an hour and a half, we're going to be doing a portfolio, not necessarily a review, but we're going to be looking at one of your portfolios and just looking at all the amazing work that you do. So stay tuned for that. But Kate, it's all yours.
Thanks, Howard. It's great to be back. It's so good to see all of you in the chat. Hi, Laura, Julia, Alberto, what is up? I'm so glad you guys are here. So before we jump into Adobe XD to design some amazing stuff today, I want to give you a little bit of background about who I am, where I'm from, how I got to designing, because I know that, to want to, design... What am I saying here? Getting used to doing this remotely.
Words are hard.
Words are hard. But
it's a very different experience, isn't it?
Yes.
But you're doing great.
I said, thank you so much. My name's Kate. I'm a designer here in San Diego, California. I got my start actually in development. I went to a code boot camp and learned to develop websites in full stack JavaScript.
Oh.
And it's because of that development that it led me to just fall in love with web design, UX, UI, everything about it. So for the past 3-4 years, I've been working my way through, like I said, development into visual design, motion design, into actually product design as well. So currently I'm with company called Mind Touch here in San Diego, California. They are an amazing company, like my second family. They focus on knowledge management for SaaS companies, and we do great. We have a lot of fun doing that.
I love that.
That's a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I love your story going from development to design. I think we're going to talk a lot about that during the 2 hours today and 2 hours tomorrow, because we hear that a lot from the chat. People are developers. They want to switch to design, or maybe it's even something completely different. They're like plumbers and they want to switch to design, or the opposite, right? And there's always questions about, if you're a designer, should you know development? And if you're a developer, should you know some design? And I think your insights, having kind of gone through both of those, are going to be incredibly valuable to the chat. And I will remind chat that Kate's here for 2 hours today, 2 hours tomorrow. If you have questions about her experience, if you have questions about design, Animal Crossing, I don't know if you haven't played in a while probably, but if you have questions about whatever, just throw them in the chat. We're definitely going to be looking over there.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I haven't touched Animal Crossing in like 3 months. I feel so bad about it, but maybe I'll play a little bit after today's stream. And like Howard said, for development, one theme that I really want to hit on today is how to be kind to your developers, right? So in XD, we're designing these interfaces, these applications, ultimately to possibly hand it over to development if you want to take it that far. And it's really, really important to structure your XD file in such a way that a developer can easily pick it up and develop it with ease. So I want to give you some of my tips and tricks as someone that was once on the other side of the process to make that as smooth as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are we going to be working on today? Well, not me. I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to sit here. But what are you going to be working on?
So we are going to be designing today, guys, an application, a mobile app called Good Place. And the whole theme of Good Place is right now, for the past, 8 months, every time I open Twitter, Facebook, anything like that, it's just, I feel like I'm bombarded with bad news, right? There's a lot of heaviness right now in the world. And so I had this idea of, okay, well, what if there was a mobile application where instead of, seeing all these top stories about bad news, you only see the good news. And so it's both on like a global and a community scale. So basically just to make people smile, uplift people, motivate people to be kind to themselves and to others, because I think that's so important right now.
I love that, because I completely agree. It seems like every time I go on any sort of application, even the most friendliest of applications, there's something that's just going to bombard me and just ruin every good feeling I possibly had, right? And I've definitely been doing my best to filter out as much as I can, even though it's a lot of things that we should be paying attention to. It's, if it's just constantly coming into your face all day, then it's just going to ruin your entire day, right? I do see Alberto in the chat mentioning that my mic is higher than Kate's. I did just drop the volume of mine, so hopefully that has fixed it a little bit, but let me know if that did not fix it.
Okay, and if it didn't fix it, I can always higher my mic level as well. So we will try to fix that for you guys.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. This is the joy of doing these things remotely. It's never going to be perfect, but we're doing our best.
There's no sushi, no boba, no San Francisco, but we're here, we're doing it, we're having fun.
Yeah.
Making the most of it. All right. So I think let's just go ahead and let's dive right into it. So basically what I've done so far for Good Place, the news source that makes people smile, is we have a few different boards talking about what the app is. I have a couple components laid out as well and a style guide. So let me go ahead and put this up. And
this style guide, by the way, is so good looking. It's the colors are great. The icons are fantastic. That logo is just smiling at my face. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, so let's just dive right in. So there's a few different things that I thought through. The first being if I wanted to take this further and eventually, I do have plans to develop it myself, but I want it, like if I ever bring a team on, I want to be able to send a few artboards over to someone that's just like looking to understand what it is. So this is the artboard that I would send over. And then these cards are actually navigation. So if they wanted to know anything about the introduction, click, and then it'll bring them right over. So I already talked about what the app is, so I don't want to reiterate if I don't have to, but something I do want to dive into is some values that I've created here at Good Place. The first being practice kindness, because that's the whole thing that the app is striving to do. Be your authentic self. I think a lot on social media, we feel that pressure to, impress other people. There's this idea where when we post, we want to see those likes or retweets or whatever. And so an idea that I had, this is kind of getting a little bit further down the line, but on this social app, there actually won't be any social component to it at all. So there's no likes, there's no comments, and I don't want to get too into it right now, but for a profile picture, it's actually, you can just choose from dozens of different 3D, I don't know if you guys have seen, but toy faces. We'll get there. I'm getting way too far ahead. I'm getting excited. Let's finish this up though. So be a catalyst for change and lead by example are the last two values. And then what our mission is. So it really is to just make people smile, make people feel good. Social media doesn't always do the best job at that lately, but we're on that mission. All right, let's dive into some fun design stuff. Here's our color palette, guys. It's these awesome, like this deep blue, this lighter blue, this orange for contrast. And then you'll notice these like weird names going on here. And I think that we see a lot of, when we're naming names, it's like orange or sky blue. And I think that's great. That's totally fine. But I wanted to have a little bit more fun with it. So these names actually all have meanings that align with our values and our beliefs at Good Place. So Ex Anima means from the heart, Ex Nihilo means created from nothing. I mean, just trying to keep that flow. But here's a good opportunity for me to talk about what this should look like when it translates to development. So even though these are the names on the more like marketing side, if you will, like I will end up naming this like primary blue, secondary blue, primary orange. And the reason for that is you're working with, different values in development. And I don't want my developers to have to try to remember these weird names. It's just not the best.
That's true, especially now that XD supports design tokens. They're probably going to look at that when you send it over to them and like, what does that say, Kate? And they're just going to be completely confused. So you want to make sure that, the design system could definitely be fun and exciting and, use interesting creative names. But when you're passing it to developers, you probably want to, definitely sync with them, figure out what kind of language and what kind of terminology that they want. Often they do want, like you said, primary blue, secondary, that sort of thing. How did you come up with these colors? Because they seem to go really well together. Did you use a service or did you just kind of mix and match and trial and error?
It was a lot of first understanding like the direction of like, so I took the idea of like positivity, right? When I think of positivity, I think of orange. It's a bright color. It makes us feel good. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, what are some good blues that I could pair with this orange? So I was set on this orange from the start. I was honestly just playing in XD, saw it. I'm like, ooh, this is good. And then I went on Behance, Dribbble, and then there are a few color palette websites online. And so using that color as like my cornerstone color, I tried to find values that just matched really well with it and made sure that it contrasted well and they still had that bright uplifting feeling that the orange does. Mm-hmm. These not so much. So I included these secondary colors basically for the reason of illustrations. So if I ever needed shadows or just a more like a less saturated hue, I have these just in case. And then my text colors as well.
Interesting. I don't often see people break out the text colors separately from everything else. That's kind of interesting. Do you see that a lot?
Here and there, I do tend to see, like usually someone will just include like a black or a gray somewhere in their primary colors or somewhere in their secondary colors. But the reason I like to do this is, again, for development, it's just a little bit more clear.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good idea. And Kevin Lee in the chat. Hey, Kevin, by the way, he's obsessed with the orange.
Oh my gosh, thanks. Isn't it so good?
It's a good color.
All right. So that wraps up colors. Oh, I did want to touch on this really quick before we move on to the next artboard. So these little, I call them ripples. So this is kind of going into like our values and our mission again, but the whole reason that these are everywhere is I imagine like, okay, one person is kind to another person. That's a ripple. And I hope that throughout this app and people sharing the good things that they do for themselves and others, it'll ripple on and have that effect.
Oh, that's fun. And is that something you would typically explain in the actual user experience of the app or the onboarding? Because I feel like that's an interesting message to really put out there into the world. A lot of people would just kind of look at this and say, oh, okay, there's a bunch of lines going around. That's kind of what I thought. They're very nice lines, but I just thought, they're there just for stylistic purposes. But knowing that there's a meaning behind it is kind of fun.
Yeah, that brings up a really good point. I hadn't initially thought of including that in the onboarding, but maybe it's something we visit. You're right, like that is an important message and we should convey that where we can.
Yeah.
All right, next section, and we're going to get to designing in just a sec. Just want to make sure you guys understand the pieces we already have so we can just jump right into it. But illustration style, I try to keep things very flat and fluid. I don't like to see too many sharp edges because there's been some studies about just like more rounded corners make people feel I don't know, it's a little bit more positive. And then for the more detailed illustrations, this is basically just saying like, don't feel like that you have to keep them simple. And then you can also use those secondary colors here. Oh, and then iconography at the bottom. So a nice like hybrid. So it's a mix of stroked icons and filled icons.
Yeah, those are really nice. Are those from a library or is that something you created yourself?
So no, these are actually from, I actually think I included, so the icon credit goes to, let me bring over this so you guys can see. I have been using this for almost every single project I've been on. Let's see, it's Shape.so. There we go, I messed up. Oh no.
Oh no.
And I just, prior to the stream, I wanted to go through and just clear my history for, just have that cleared. I will include this in the chat later on because we're actually going to bring in some of those icons. So.
It always happens.
I know. It's like, oh my God, I had
it
saved in my browser history and now it's not there, but it's okay. We'll figure it out. But to answer your question, so these were not made myself. They were downloaded from Shapes.so. I don't know why it's not loading for me. You guys go ahead and try it out. But these are amazing. It's everything from your outlined or your stroked icons to your filled icons. They have hybrids like this. And then you get to download the SVG and AI file, so you can go in and tweak all of those colors to your heart's content.
Nice. They look great.
Yeah, they're really good. Notice I don't have anything for typography yet. I know that the typeface I'll be using is Averta, but the reason I don't like to define typography at the beginning is because it always changes. There's no way I can just sit down and be like, okay, I want my H1 to be 32 pixels and my H3 to be 20 pixels. So what I like to do is, you'll notice in my character styles, I have a few styles already going that I know is working for the application thus far. And instead of like editing it, on all the different artboards, I can just come in here and be like, I think H1 would be better as 26 pixels. And that's going to update universally across the whole XD application.
Absolutely.
All right.
Kevin is saying in the chat, totally separate convo, but her icons and illustrations are on point. And they're absolutely on point. And I think that brings up a fun conversation. I've definitely found, and you've probably seen this, Kate, too, going to various websites and mobile apps, is that icons and illustrations specifically can really completely change the perception of the application. And when you're talking about a service like Good Place that wants you to feel good about yourself, or the news that's coming in, it is so important to get the right illustrations and the right icons, the right colors, because otherwise, if you use a lot of dark reds, for example, it could just, even though the news might be super positive, just seeing that dark red or angry illustrations for whatever reason could just completely throw everything off.
Absolutely. There's this whole psychology around colors, and I really encourage you all, like, if you ever have, a free hour or so, just read on color, read about the psychology behind it and why it makes us feel the way that we do, because it's going to make you that much stronger of a designer when you understand those things. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's definitely a place and time for certain colors. Red, for example, works great in food, but if you're designing something like a medical application, which I did a while back, on a masterclass, I stressed so much that red should probably never be used in that type of medical application, because it often induces anger amongst people. And if someone is opening up this application because they're potentially feeling suicidal, the last thing they want is to be even more angry, right? So I agree with Kate. Read up on psychology of colors and that sort of thing, because it definitely will help in your designing.
Yeah, and that's where it gets hard a little bit too, right? Because when you think hospital medical, I think a lot of people might think of that Red Cross and think, okay, I want to use red in my design. It would seem almost obvious, but you want to think about how it's probably better to use blues and lighter tones and more tonal colors, just because, like you mentioned already, people's mind spaces, you want to make sure you're not, you just want to make sure you're being thoughtful of these things.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Reverb says, read the book, Drunk Tank Pink. Okay, I will make note of that.
I hope that's a safe for work book. I haven't looked that up
I know,
yet.
that's what I was just
afraid.
thinking.
Okay, I'm going to look it up
That's
while
funny.
you dive into the next screen.
Perfect. All right, guys. So today I want to spend the majority of the time designing this sign-up experience. So I have 2 artboards already. So this would be the splash page for Good Place. You know, Good Place, news that makes you smile. You see those ripples. And then for create account, you click and it animates over
That was
to,
fun.
Yeah, you start giving them some information. And the reason that I want to split up my input fields is because when you're asking a user or a potential user to give you their information, they're judging that form based on 2 things. The first is the complexity of the form, right? Like, so how much time is it going to take them to fill it out? How many form input or how many input fields are there? And then the second thing is how much information they feel comfortable giving.
Right.
And so I think with a lot of mobile apps, though they don't ask for much information, giving them 4 input fields all at once might feel like, oh, I'm gonna have to fill out like all this information. It's not really the best onboarding experience. And so my plan here is to split that up. So I want to walk you through what I want my flow to be for this. And a perfect plugin opportunity for this is Whiteboard. What Whiteboard allows you to do is it gives you all these different templates, elements, drawing capabilities. I use this in for product design as well, because you get, oh my gosh, they give you flowcharts that I like to use for when I'm doing or creating user flows. There's a lot here, guys, and it's a really great tool to use. But what I'm going to use for this is just a simple, good old Post-it note. Where is that Post-it note going? That is a good question. You guys see the Post-it note? There it is.
Yeah, and this plugin was created by the same team. It's an internal team at Adobe, actually. Same team that created the Quick Mockup plugin, which, Kate, you probably have seen is also another mind-blowing plugin. If you're looking for very quick mockups or even in-depth elements and color styles and things like that. And they're working on another plugin. I believe they announced it. If not, I apologize in advance. But it's all about presentations and you know, creating beautiful presentations using Adobe XD. So that's something that's coming as well. But yeah, they've created some great plugins.
Yeah, it's incredible. I use it every project. So what I'm going to do here is, before I even jump into design or colors or fonts or anything, I want to make sure that I have a thorough understanding of each screen that I want to be designing. It's so important to understand that full flow before you jump the gun into design. So I know that from them, I want to collect a first name. I'm going to want to collect an email, a username, and let's do a password. Cool.
Yeah, and starting off with the flow and low fidelity designs can help tremendously, because I've so often gotten to the point where I've just dove into the high fidelity designs, started going through the process, and then realized, oh, I'm missing a whole chunk of what should be in this application, and then I have to go back and rearrange the entire thing. Looking at this, for example, one thing I would love to see on an application like this, and you're going back to what you're talking about earlier about users not wanting to enter so much information. Sometimes I don't want to enter any information, right? I already have accounts. I have an Apple account, I have a Facebook account, I have a Twitter account. I just want to be very quickly able to log in with those accounts, like sign in with Apple, and then I'm in, right? I don't want to give them my email address. I don't want to give them anything. I just want to go, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I feel like more apps should do that. If I could just sign into every app with Twitter, I'd be so happy.
Yeah. Until you have to deactivate your Twitter account or you get hacked or something like that. Then it's a whole mess.
Yeah, I think that happened recently with all the verified accounts, but
yeah.
No Twitter. Anyways, so you're going to notice for both of these artboards, I have iPhone elements. Adobe XD is awesome, and they provide all these different kits for different iPhone elements, so you can see the bar up here, the outline, and that's just ensuring that everything is nice and neat in place and ready to go when it hits development. So
Yeah,
I'm
and if anyone
I'm
out
covering
there
all my
is-
blind
oh,
spots.
Sorry
Oh,
about
go
that.
ahead. Sorry.
If anyone out there is developing or designing for the upcoming iOS 14, Apple did recently update their UI kit. It's in beta right now. It's on same link, file, get UI kits, iOS. And then I think also Google updated their kit, I think it was last week, to support additional material designs. So they're constantly being updated. So if you are designing for newer operating systems, you can definitely do that.
Sweet. That's a good thing to keep in mind. You want to make sure that you always have those, the most recent ones.
Yeah.
So what we're going to be doing here is we know that we want name, email, username, and password. So here's our first artboard. You can see this will be for our first name. Let's see, we have nice to meet you blank. We're excited to have you. Let's get started with a first name. I think that's good. Let's go ahead and design this input field. So you'll see that this is just a regular old folder, no component or anything yet. So let's go ahead and just make that our master component with Control Command K. And why I'm making this a component is I know that I'm going to want to use this across multiple artboards, and no one wants to go through and, let's say I want to change the font size to 16 pixels. I'm not going to want to go through each instance of that and do that. So this is going to save me a lot of time here.
Absolutely.
We have upgraded from the Photoshop days of design, of web design anyways. All right, so first name, I want that to be lowercase. And then let's just make this something simple like enter your first name. Perfect.
Cornell in the chat is asking if the logo was inspired by Amazon.
You know, it's so funny you mentioned that. At first, it was not my intentions. I just knew I wanted a smiley face somewhere, and I actually got, it kind of looks like Kraft Macaroni and Cheese's logo as well, which I thought was so funny because like it looks like a little noodle. And then I was driving the other day, and an Amazon car was in front of me. I'm like, oh, that's cute, like the A to Z smile, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I did with Good Place. So there's a lot of subconscious influence that we don't even realize all the time.
Yeah, we also have Arbor in the chat saying we need a new way to deal with wireframing, flow, and design in XD. The current methodology makes it feel redundant to wireframe, which is actually not the case. And I agree. I think wireframing should definitely be a bigger focus on design, right? I think a lot of people skip over that phase and don't pay enough attention to it. I would love to hear from anyone in the chat, including Arbor, what would you like to see in Adobe XD to help with that flow? Because the team is always, they're working on a ton of features right now. Some will be available at Max, some will be a little bit later, but definitely something that the team either is thinking about or should be thinking about. So throw those suggestions in the chat. Also go to adobeXD.uservoice.com. Put them there because they use that to help prioritize what the roadmap looks like for the coming months and years.
Yeah, make sure to give us that feedback.
Yeah. And Kate, as you're designing this flow and this experience, if there's anything that you come across that you just think, you know what, it would be great if XD had this to make my life a little bit easier, just throw it out there because there's a good chance someone from the team is going to be watching. Not to put any pressure on you.
Now I feel like super pressured. Oh, I think we should do this. No.
The future of XD is in your hands.
Oh boy, that is big weight on my shoulders. All right, I'm watching the chat though. I want to use someone's name from the chat. Kevin Lee, I've seen you quite a bit. You get to be the star of our onboarding experience here.
Yay, Kevin.
Yay, woo. Everyone say yay, Kevin. All right, so basically what I've done here is we have our default state, right? Then the user clicks it, it goes to the targeted state. We're just going to imagine that functionality is them entering their name. To make this a targeted state, usually you don't want to make something, you don't want to rely on color for things because of accessibility reasons, but we see that text change as well, so that'll be just fine. And then I want to give this another state of maybe there's an error state. Maybe someone tries to click on the continue button and they didn't enter anything. And so if I come right over here to our components, there's this little guy that I made earlier. I want to bring him over. And to add something to a component, we want to make sure that we're inside the component. There are so many times where I have the component highlighted and I copy paste and I'm like, oh my God, it's not in there. You always want to make sure you're clicking on the children beneath it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a few things in the chat. Let me see if I can get to them before they scroll too far. So Lance is saying a plugin that allows you to input text would be nice in XD. And so there is a plugin. So the Anima plugin, I can't spell Anima. I don't know how to spell that. But that plugin offers a bunch of different features that XD doesn't natively do at the moment, and it requires you to view the prototype on their website. But you can create things like placeholders for videos and GIFs. You can also create input boxes, so you can actually type in them when you're previewing on the Anima website, which is really cool. Obviously, these are things that the team is thinking about exploring and hopefully developing at some point. But until then, plugins like Anima definitely filling in those gaps a little bit. Frankie's saying we want a free Adobe XD design ecosystem for wireframing, like components, input fields, checkboxes, etc. So there isn't one built in, but there are a few plugins, including the wireframing plugin, what's Whiteboard plugin that Kate was just using. Also, the quick mockup plugin has wireframing type features as well, elements you can just kind of pop into your designs. And then finally, Arbor is saying combination of a new tab which creates symbol artboards, and you can drag and drop assets into the wireframe placeholders, and XD responsively fits the assets. Yeah, that could be cool as well. Something you can also kind of get away with certain plugins like the Whiteboard plugin and the Quick Mockup plugin. Also, if you create your own library, there's a lot of different wireframing XD files and UI kits out there. If you create those as a library in Adobe XD, then you can just kind of load them in. You get linked assets, right? You can just load them in and then use them on basically all of your projects. And if you update it once, then it updates across all of your different projects. So lots of different options while the team is working on much bigger things.
Those are great suggestions. I love all of them. If we could just get all of them, please, Howard.
I'll get on it right now.
All right. Cool. So in the meantime, I just went ahead and did those different states. So we have our default state, our targeted state, error state, and disabled state. What I did then was I copied the component, but then I dragged the master, the main component all the way over here. And the reason I do that is I just like all of my master components to live on one artboard. That way, if I ever decide, it's just easier to find them all, right? And so then I pasted from what I copied before, because Adobe XD copy and pastes in the same space, which is so nice. One of my favorite features, capabilities. I don't know. All right, so we have our input field here. Let's go ahead and name this input field first name. I think that's
very quickly going back to what you're talking about earlier about posting all of your main components on a separate artboard. Is that something that you're satisfied with at the moment, or would you like something like, I know the team has publicly said they're exploring pages for Adobe XD. Would you like a separate page specifically for your components, or do you like them, kind of on the same artboard or canvas as all the other artboards?
It depends on like where the page would be, because like right now I don't mind the workflow of having them all in one document. It makes changing things really easy. So when you say page, is that like a separate XD file, or what do you mean?
No, it would be the same file, very similar to how Sketch kind of lays it out. They have different pages you can kind of cycle between, on the left-hand panel. That's definitely something the team is exploring. So you don't have to go to separate documents. You can just have, maybe one page for your components, one page for I don't know, your iPad flow, or one page for your mobile flows, things like that.
Oh, I do like that idea. This is probably not the best answer, but I would say maybe. There's not really anything wrong with the way it is right now, in my opinion, but I know other people may feel differently, so.
Cool.
Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just setting up my XD file for all of the different fields, and you're probably like, Kate, why are you putting them all on one artboard? What are you doing? And it's because there's going to be some animation in this onboarding, and so I want to make sure that all of my elements are set up to animate cleanly. So we got first name, we got email, we got password, and username.
Cornell is saying GIF, MP4, and Lottie file support is what I need in XD, and a timeline. Yeah, I would love all 4 of those features in XD. I would love them tomorrow. But those specifically are massive features that I think, aside from Lottie support, that I don't know, but I think GIF, MP4, and some sort of like additional animation support is something that the team has publicly stated that they're looking into exploring and that sort of thing. Especially talking about GIF and MP4 support, those things are tricky because anytime and you probably heard me say this a million times, but anytime you start adding in, very large video files, especially ones that move, there's the possibility that performance can suffer. So the team wants to make sure that when they do introduce video and GIF support, that it's not going to bring down performance of the application, which they spend so much time making sure is nice and snappy.
Snappy is a good way to describe it. I think when I talk to most people about XD and I ask them what they like best about XD, it's always how fast it is, how clean it is, how welcoming the interface is.
The team spends a ton of time making sure that it's, remains snappy. And there's definitely been a few times where, an update comes out that slows something down, especially with, customers who have a ton of components, like hundreds and hundreds of components. There's a tendency that something would slow it down, but instead of just kind of brushing it aside, it's like all hands on deck. The team is just working constantly to make sure to figure out why something might slow something down, even if it's such a small edge case. The team is always, looking into these things.
Jack says, yes, XD, Lottie, and After Effects.
Yeah,
Oh, that's why we started talking about this, huh? Because she brought it up.
That would be kind of fun. I wonder if that's something that can be done with a plugin. I'm not sure.
XD does make it really easy to search for and download plugins. Like I'll show you guys a little bit later in the stream, but it's the whole browsing experience, the searching experience. They did a really, really good job with it.
Yeah, and it's definitely only going to get better as additional APIs are available from the XD team. It'll introduce more capabilities for developers to tap into.
Okay, so where we're at with this, we have all of our different input fields over here. So our first name, email, username, and password. And then what I've done is I've put it all in a mask. And the reason I put it in a mask is because for our animation, my plan is to have them kind of like fade down, and then the new one will fade back up. So that mask is going to allow us to cleanly do that.
Interesting.
Oh, speaking of plugins, another one of my favorite plugins, and I mentioned this the last time I was on here too, is Stark. Because
that's a fantastic one.
Right? Accessibility is so important, you guys, and we got to make sure we're paying attention to these things.
Yeah.
Before I show you that, though, let me go ahead and put this text in a mask because I kind of need it to do the next step.
Yeah, the Stark plugin was created by Kat Noon from the company Stark, and yeah, it's just so important these days to really focus on accessibility because you and I can see a certain element against a certain background doesn't mean everyone can, and a plugin like that would absolutely help with that. I think someone earlier asked, I forget who it was, but why, where it says nice to meet you and then there's a blank spot. Why is that particular name, like why is there no name in there? I think that's what the person was asking.
Oh, I hear what you're saying. So that is meant to just kind of be like a conversational start to the onboarding. So instead of just saying like, nice to meet you, let's get started, like nice to meet you blank, I think it shows a little bit of eagerness to learn their name, then a little bit of a spoiler. But the next screen, when we get email, it's going to be like, what's your email? Person, who are we using for the first
I think it was
name?
Kevin.
Kevin. It's gonna be like, yeah, nice to meet you, Kevin. What's your email, Kevin? So it just shows that it's more conversational.
Do you think there's an opportunity to simplify this screen even more and essentially just remove the entire, not saying you have to do this, but just remove the entire like first name input field and just have the nice to meet you blank spot where they can tap into that and type their name in? Of course, you'd probably have to really emphasize that this is an area you can type in, but it could be an interesting idea to really minimalize that.
Yeah, I really like that. I think it definitely would free up some space, make it much more open. The only reason I may want to keep this label is because we were just talking accessibility. We want to make sure we're pairing each of our input fields with a label. But there are some ways to work around that. We see in Google material design, where the label is first, like where the placeholder text would be, and then when you tap in there, the label would fly up to the top. I don't know. There's different ways to work around it. Yeah. But I do like that idea. Okay, so here we have our intro text, and what I was going to show you guys is Stark. Let's see. Go into our plugin, select Stark. So I don't know why this isn't working the way I thought it would, the way it did earlier. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to drag out a white rectangle really quick. This is kind of a hacky way to do this, but to get the point across. So I should make sure that's behind the text first. That would help. You can also do Control Command bracket keys to move things within masks. So we have our text selected. Let's select that rectangle. And so what it's doing is it's going to compare the contrast of the gray with the white background. So come in here, check contrast, and you'll see that we're actually failing, right? We're not even meeting AA for large text. So what we definitely want to do is change that. I think there was a big design trend with the light grays, and like, don't get me wrong, I think it looks fantastic, but truth of the matter is just not accessible, and we want to make sure we're being thoughtful of everyone.
Yeah, Lucas in the chat is saying, Sketch user here looking to make the jump over to XD at some point. Do you folks have the same level of customization for responsive resizing of components? And yeah, as Kevin just jumped in there, I think it's actually better. Components in XD and the instances and all those things support pretty much every single override. So you can override basically anything on an instance, and as long as you maintain that link back to the main component, you can still make changes to certain elements that were not overridden, and you can resize them. You can do a lot of different things, and Kate's going to definitely be working more with components, so definitely if you have time, Lucas, definitely stay tuned. Or you can go to letsxd.com/ what did I name that page? Is it just components, or actually letsxd.com/states? I think that's where you can find a lot of different information about components and states over there.
All right, next up, we are gonna copy and paste each of these texts and do basically design similarly to how we did with the field down here. So first name, email.
So you're basically setting this up for animation later, right?
Right, yeah. Okay, so we're on our email layer. Let's go ahead and write some email copy. That can go away. I don't know why that was there to begin with. It's okay though. Okay, so for email, I have some notes on what I think the copy should be, but you guys help me out. Let's write some fun copy for our users. So like I mentioned earlier, we can do what's your email, Kate, or not Kate, we're using Kevin.
Spelling is hard when you're streaming live.
I know, I can never do it. Okay, there we go. And then some fun copy. We could say something like, no spam, we promise. let's see. I have you're here for good news, not a flooded inbox, but I'm watching the chat if any of you guys have any better ideas, which I'm sure are out there. So you're here for...
Mike says, never trust the grays, in reference to the light gray text. Yeah, you got to be careful with that stuff. Definitely, you know, when in doubt, just move that little color selector just all the way down. Just go almost pure black.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next up. Create a unique username. Also something to keep in mind here, as if we look at our copy, like first name, there's emphasis on that they don't have a name on that second line. So a little bit of hierarchy there. Same with, oh god, I'm making a mess with username. It's just much easier to scan. It's just more usable, in my opinion. And then password. Actually, wait, I think I missed a step. I needed to write the copy for username. See, looking at the Kevin says copy. Yes, Slay Queen. I love it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Create a username that slays as much as you do queen.
There you go.
Or king. All right. Thank you, Kevin. You are truly the star of this stream, and I love it. And then something that I messed up on is we're using an 8-point grid for this design. I totally bypassed that on accident. But if we go back to first name, we'll see that everything is neatly like in multiples of 8.
And why is that?
So it's honestly just so much easier for your developers, instead of having to go in and define padding everywhere, like, oh, I want 17 pixel padding here and I want 31 padding here. When you tell your developers that we're working on an 8-point grid, they know to work in those multiples. So it's going to be, they're going to have more control on their side, and 8's just a very versatile number. I've heard people use a 4-point grid, which is totally fine as well when you need to get that detail. But 8-point tends to be the standard.
Yeah, and I think more often than not, I think one of the iPhones actually breaks away from this, of course, but more often than not, the devices that we're designing for, the pixel dimensions are divisible by 8. So it just makes sure that everything will align really nicely across the screen if you use, you know, that 8 pixel grid or anything, 16, 32, whatever it might be.
Okay, last one, guys. Then we're finally going to start doing some animation.
Ooh, fancy.
As much, you know, as this is tedious, we are setting ourselves up for success here. So, lastly, let's...
And I think that's a good point while you type that out, is setting yourself up for success when you know you're going to be animating. And these are things you should definitely keep in mind as you're designing. Keep thinking, you know, is this screen going to animate to something else, or is it simply going to transition, right? If it's going to simply transition, meaning you just click on a button and either slides over or it just cuts or dissolves to the next screen, then you don't have to worry about everything that Kate's doing right now. You can just have multiple artboards. You can design each state on a different artboard and then just wire them up later, right? But what Kate's doing now is she's aware of the fact that at some point, probably the next step, is she's going to be animating all the different elements between the different screens. And the way Auto Animate works is that it looks at the differences between the layers on the various artboards or various states within a component, and it animates those changes. And it looks at things like group names, layer names, position, and that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that the elements you're designing are in the same groups, have the same layer names, and that sort of thing. That way, when animation does take place, XD realizes that they're the same elements across the artboards, and they've moved or they've scaled or whatever it might be, and then it'll just know. So you just keep that in the back of your mind as you're designing.
Okay, last step, guys. We're gonna have these illustrations animate as well. So first name, email, username, password. actually, I want email on the bottom, or first name on the bottom. So this is why the flow is so helpful, to help me remember which order I'm doing things in. So we have first name, and then email, email, and then username and password. And what these rectangles are, we're gonna drag in some imagery. But first I wanna make sure there's not a stroke or a border on any of them, because that would not be fun. Okay, so got some more fun illustrations headed your way. I think I specified, yeah. So notice I'm gonna be loading these in as SVGs. SVGs and PNGs are totally fine. I prefer to work with SVGs in this stage, because if I use an SVG and I decide that I want part of the illustration to be a different color, or maybe I want the stroke to be, or the border to be thicker, I have all of that capability in XD already, and I don't have to jump back to Illustrator or whatever vector tool that I'm using. Okay, so we have our email. So, perfect example. Why is there a rectangle behind you? Oh, because all the other rectangles.
Oh,
that would make sense. I'm like, what is going on here? So
yeah, one of the other cool things about working with SVG is it's it's all path based. So if you do want to take that animation to the next level, you can animate those paths and just change them across the states or artboards. So like that first guy in the little illustration, he could be waving or something like that as he's like transitioning out of the artboard.
Totally. And then here's that capability that I talked about earlier. So I know that I want my envelope to be a little bit bigger, and I can do all of that right here in XD, which is super nice. And then making sure to name our layers correctly. Layer naming is super important, and keeping everything clean is super important.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you could tell from the first 15 minutes of the stream, which is all just housekeeping at this point. Okay, so we got email. Next up, username.
So what do you hope to do with this after you finish this stream? Do you want to actually turn this into an actual application, or do you want to just like publish it as a case study? What are your plans for the future?
So my plan is to start learning how to build apps with no code tools, because I can create and develop my own website, but I don't know how to make my own apps. And so I think this is the perfect segue to learn how to develop my own apps. So, but who knows? Maybe this will take off and be something more. Who knows?
Yeah, I know there are a few plugins that try to help, with that process of converting a design into an application. Of course, it's never going to be perfect because of the complexities that some of us make in our designs. But Google also not too long ago released a Flutter plugin, which also helps transition from design to code. And some people have been having some pretty good success with that. So that might be something you might want to look into if anyone out there is hoping to take their design and make it something real.
And I think that's what's so powerful about design too, is like, I love just going in XD and creating, I think what I'm trying to get at is sometimes it feels good to not design with constraints. Sometimes we want to create something more visually appeasing and have that fun. And I think that we all have that right. And, I think that's great. But at the same time, when we can make something that's not only beautiful, but accessible, and take that all the way to development, I think that's just so powerful.
Yeah. And that probably is the future. There's definitely going to be a world where developers are needed for very complex projects and very in-depth websites with backends and databases and things like that. But there definitely will be a future. Look at Webflow, for example, where if just the average schmo wants to create a website by just designing, they'll be able to do that. And I think we're making steps, very baby steps towards that with mobile applications as well. But it's a long process. It's very tricky because it's never perfect.
100%. Okay, we made it, you guys. Everything is set. Everything's ready to go. What I've done is I've taken those illustrations and shift them all to the left, about holding shift about 8 times. Hold on, actually, one last thing, I promise. Another opportunity to use Whiteboard. So with Whiteboard, you can also freely draw on any of your XD files. So let's say I'm on a Zoom call and I want my manager to like look at this and be like, oh yeah, I like this illustration, but maybe like not this one. So there's that capability. But also something that I like to do is, let's get another artboard. And I like to actually sketch out the illustration flow really quick and just take it lo-fi before I animate everything out. So with this, I'll just call this doodle is probably better. Doodle. And then Whiteboard, draw, start drawing. Here we are. I'm going to use my Wacom tablet for this because no one wants to see me draw with the mouse, I promise.
I know, drawing with the mouse is just the worst.
Oh my gosh, don't get me started. Just sharp lines everywhere. Okay, so we have, we're going to use purple for our illustration. Excuse how horrible this looks. Let's use pink for this text area. All right, and this is not meant to be pretty. This is truly just for me to have an idea of what I'm doing with all these elements. So these 3 boxes represent these 3 different elements. So, and then let's use this teal for the actual illustration. So this purple box is the circle, and then the teal is illustration. And what I want to have happen is I want the illustration to fly to the left, and then I want the circle to fly to the right, because it's going to give you that interchanging, like as you're progressing through the screens, it's going to feel like you're actually traveling, which I think is pretty cool. I don't want to flood this with animation because I think the best animation's the ones that you like barely notice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think subtlety is very important. And so these both are just going to fade down. Okay. And done. And so it saved all of that to the artboard, and now I can just use that as a point of reference.
Yeah,
and also being able to draw.
It may not matter too much, but it's fun to point out that those drawings are actually vector based. So they're all, you can resize them, you can make them as large as you want, you can change the colors if you needed to. But yeah, the team did a really good job at that Whiteboard plugin.
Definitely. Okay.
Laura's asking, is it possible to work in XD on the iPad? So not natively, but you can use, on newer Macs, you can use the sidecar support in Catalina, I believe, and you can sort of, you definitely can, just move your XD doc or file or window, I should say, over to the iPad and then use your Apple Pencil. It's not the greatest, but you can do it if you need to.
Okay, so like I've said in the flow above, I brought the illustration to the left, and instead of just turning off visibility, what I want to do is actually bring the opacity down, because when XD animates, when it animates, it's going to fade out because of the opacity. And then with this ripple, I want it to look like it's rolling. So notice I have these two, let me zoom in a little bit, these 2 ripples, and I want it to rotate. So let's say I want this to rotate 300 degrees, and then I want this one to rotate slower, so I'll make this one like 120 degrees. Cool. And then these ones are easy. We've already made our mask. This is really simple. We're just going to select the layer that we want to pull down. We're going to do multiples of 4 and then turn the opacity down. And then we're going to do the same thing with our input fields. 1, 2, 3, 4, and turn the opacity down. So this is acting as our transition screen. So I'm going to name this sign up first name transition. That did not say anything close to transition. Transition. And I want this background to change colors. So I want to make this our primary orange. So if I did everything right, when I go to prototype it, all of this is triggered on click of this button, right? So on tap, we want it to auto animate, to transition. And this is where you can play around a little bit. I'm just gonna try ease in out at 0.5. And let's hope and pray. And there is some of it. So what's great is we've already...
You would essentially have 3 different artboards, and then you would kind of do the out, and then you would do the in on the third one?
Sorry, say that one more time.
So are you thinking of having like 3 different artboards, right? So you have the nice to meet you one, and then you have the one in the middle, which is basically where everything kind of goes away, and then one more where everything comes in?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to duplicate this, and now we can change this to say 204, 204, bring in our circle, so it's center aligned again. And we already did all the heavy work for our illustrations, so here's email, and just center align him. Yeah. Arbor says, would overlays simplify this a bit? Do you mean like if you were to take a rectangle and like draw over each one and then manipulate the rectangle to hide and show things? Because I have done that.
Yeah, it could be also be the actual overlay feature, which I haven't used in a million years now that components are available, but that could be a possibility for some things. I mean, overlays are a little bit basic, so you can have like an overlay on an overlay, for example, but for certain things, overlays will work well.
And then something I forgot to do was take all of the other elements and turn their opacity all the way down, because I want that fade up as well.
Right. So we have about half an hour until we get to the artist spotlight section of the show. And as Val pointed out in the chat, there's a tab at the top of the Behance Live page where you can nominate somebody. So if you know a really nice artist who has great work, definitely throw them in that nomination form. And, one day we might take a look at their stuff live on air.
I think I ended up moving a mask somewhere along the way. So this is where we just got to quick reduplicate and do it one more time. But yeah. It's better to catch these things early on, right? So let's see, move the ripple.
And Abdullah is asking, why not use components and states? I'm assuming for something like this, and you absolutely can. I think, the way Kate's doing it is a little bit more visual, so everyone out there on the stream can see every step of the process, but you can absolutely do this exact process on one artboard using components and states if you wanted to.
Okay. And so then with this artboard, we still have to bring this copy down. That was my bad. Let's bring email up.
Someone's asking, I probably missed this, but how did you get those pretty graphics you are using now? And I'm assuming they are referring to the illustrations and the email.
Yeah, so these are all, let me bring a window over. Let's see if it'll work this time. So is it Shapes.io? I don't think so. I knew it as Shapes.so, but it wasn't loading earlier for some reason. Maybe if we just try to Google it, maybe something will come up. Oh, yeah, here it is.
Oh, Shape.so.
What was I spelling before?
I think shapes, plural.
Oh, damn it.
So
Oh,
close.
darn it. That'll do it. Sign in. But anyways, yeah, if you want to use the illustrations that I'm using, it's Shape.so. It's these beautiful vector icons, illustrations, even animations that export. I think they use Lottie, which is something we were talking about earlier. They're fantastic. I highly, highly recommend them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we're using in this project.
Nice.
So go give them some love. All right. Prototype. On click of this button. We want this to come over here. And it should, oh no, we don't want it to do that. That was my bad. We want this to be a time transition. So when you hit this button, this happens, waits a second, and then it transitions over. So we want to change this to time. I don't want there to be a delay. I want it to be pretty quick. Ease in out. Let's just keep the same speed. Let's see how this looks. There it is.
Oh, fun.
Let's do it one more time. Oh, wait, email didn't animate. Or did it? I don't know. I think I messed something up along the way, but...
It happens.
Oh, no. It happens. We're just going to keep going, guys.
Yeah.
How
just
much
out of curiosity,
longer do we have?
what would it look like if you wired up the first artboard to the last one? I'm just curious to see what XD would do with it.
Let's find out.
Okay.
So we get the circle. We still get
Not as fancy.
The rotation, but we're not getting that movement across the x-axis, which is still, honestly, it's pretty good.
It's not bad. Not as fancy, though.
It's not as fancy, but I don't know. Anyways, I think you guys understand the process, and I know that we're coming up almost for the Behance portfolio review. So to just save us some time here, I went ahead and had this all designed out for us already. Because
23 minutes left.
Oh, 23. I thought we had like 5 minutes left. That would
Oh
make
no,
sense.
we have plenty of time. And then after that, we'll probably go back to your screen for about another 10 minutes or so. So you might have like a half an hour to dive through this.
Perfect. Well, I don't want to, spend this whole time me, pushing stuff around. So this is what it ultimately would be. So here's our create account, and we go through this flow, right? So this is what ultimately everything would look like. But something I want to talk about is when we are doing stuff, when we are creating for development, we don't often think about things like, we talked about this earlier with input fields, but we don't actually show our developers how things will look when people are typing. Right. And so, for example, this input field is all the way at the bottom. And so a developer may be like, how much should this get pushed up? What should I do? I'm not really sure. So we want to make sure we're thinking about that entire flow all the way through. So what I'm going to do here... That's a good point,
because when they tap on that field, a keyboard's going to pop up from the bottom. It's going to take up 30 to 40% of the screen. So you're going to have to somehow, move some of that stuff up so that they can see what they're typing.
Right. And so XD's actually made this incredibly easy, again, with those kits. I don't know what I would do without those mobile UI kits. So I went ahead and copy pasted one of their keyboards over. Let's bring this up here. And it's going to take up about, let's actually see, this much space. So I'm going to group this and call this keyboard. And just hide it for a second. So what I'm going to do is, when we want to make sure that we're hiding iPhone elements because it's the topmost layer and you're not going to be able to easily get to what's beneath it. So maybe we don't need this. Maybe we say, goodbye. We're just going to hide it temporarily. And maybe this comes all the way up, right? So maybe right there. Okay, we need to give it a little bit more room.
Kevin says, do you ever just re-click through your prototype to watch the animation over and over and over again because you're just so proud of yourself? Or is that just me? I do that all the time.
I relate, Kevin. Okay, so here's a keyboard. It's not perfect, but you know, it's okay. So let's put the iPhone element back on. And then on click of this field. Let's just make it the whole thing. Do we want it to auto animate? Well, we could give it a pretty cool animation effect if we wanted to, where we you know grab that keyboard, copy paste it down here, put it like under. No, we want it on top of things. We actually want it at the top. It's way top.
You know, what'd be kind of fun is when you get to if there's like a password field, and there's that guy at the top, with his arms out. I forget which service I saw this recently on, but it'd be kind of fun if you can animate him so that he covers his eyes so he's not looking at the password.
Oh my gosh, that's so smart. What are we using right now for a password? This lock and key.
Oh, okay.
So you're saying to like bring this guy over and like have him go like that.
That could be fun. It'd probably be a little bit difficult to do, but could be fun.
Yeah, let's explore it with the extra time at the end and see what we can come up with.
Yeah, maybe someone in the chat remembers, because I did it not too long ago. It was a few days ago, I think. There was a service I was using. I was typing my password. There was like that monkey emoji. And as I started typing, it just like covered its eyes. It was so cute.
Oh. All right, let's see. Yep, and there it is.
Nice.
So it might be a lot of movement. I don't know if that's too jarring. Again, we want people to feel like comfortable when they come here. We don't want to overwhelm them with too much animation. I just have so much fun with animation in XD.
Yeah.
I could animate for hours. Okay, so one more time. Here is the create an account experience. You got your first name, you got your email, you got your username, and your password.
Nice.
And I don't want to forget you, Kevin. This Kate will change to Kevin. You're locked in here. Just wanted to fast forward a little bit. Okay, so we have maybe about 10 minutes, 15 minutes left until portfolio review. Cool. Okay, let's jump back over to our work in progress here. And I want to talk about the homepage, right? So after you create an account, what are you going to see next? So I imagine that they're gonna hit the home page, and this is what I'm imagining for the flow. I want to get another one of my sticky notes again, just because I like to leave notes to myself, and for any, you know, if this were to become a bigger project, leave notes for your other designers, you know, create
That's true,
collaboratively.
Yeah, you can invite other people to join your document and work at the same time, and having notes like that can go a long way, because, you know, of course you can have things like Google Docs and all these different services you can kind of collaborate with, but if everything's in one single document in XD, it'll help a lot. Oh, and someone in the chat, I think, posted. It's pending right now. Let me approve it. Bam. Let's see. Is this the monkey thing? Oh, that's right. Yeah, this is another one that I've seen. It's the Yeti. I have seen that one.
Wait, what? The Yeti?
That's so cool. Yeah, someone in the chat just posted the Instagram link. It's basically the same concept that we were talking about, but using a Yeti. It's very cute.
Aw, that's so cool. Okay, so it's not so much a flow as it is like the structure of the page, but I'm imagining the good word here. And the good word is basically Good Place's most featured news blog article.
Okay.
So you can swipe down to read that. Next up, we're going to have featured news where each different, like if you guys have had like Instagram Reels just came out or Snapchat, you click on those stories and they act as like a visual story with audio and all of that. And I don't want Good Place to just be a collection of all these articles. I love reading, but I know some people prefer to watch a video or, you know, whatever. I want to make sure I'm hitting on all those different points. It makes it more fun too. So that's what this is going to be. And then last up, we're going to have community news, which is going to act as like a social feed. But like I mentioned earlier, I'm not imagining the capability to like or comment on posts, because the whole reason and purpose of this app is to motivate other people and make yourself just feel good. And I don't want someone to feel like, oh, I donated money to whatever cause, I'm going to go to Good Place and write about it, and then them seek out likes. Like, that is not at all the purpose. This isn't a popularity contest for what good you can do. I just think that's completely missing the point. So instead, I want to take likes away, take comments away. You can follow people if you want, but I want to take away all of that pressure that some other social apps can provide.
Yeah, anytime you enable comments on a service, you are asking for trouble. I mean, just look at YouTube comments or Facebook comments or Twitter comments or any comment anywhere on the internet. You're always, someone can post the cutest picture of a dog on Reddit or Twitter or whatever it might be, and somehow after like 7 comments it'll turn political and it'll just turn ugly. So it's like, I agree, just get rid of comments. No comments, no one can say anything. Just read and absorb the amazing news that is Goodreads or good whatever this is called. Good Place, that's the thing.
Good Place. Yeah.
I forgot to ask earlier, but how do you envision curating these things or moderating? Because of course, you know, I don't know if it's user driven, if people can submit their own pieces of news, or it's, you know, curating from other news sources. But how do you envision that taking place? Oops.
So I'm imagining for the Good Word, that's all going to be like in-house created. So we're going to go seek out good news that's happening globally, and then we'll create our own visual piece and article about it. Mm-hmm. For featured good news, probably something along the same lines, but just on a smaller scale. Maybe it's catered more towards like their community or just something like that. And then for the actual community news, which isn't pictured yet, I was envisioning it as sort of like a Twitter minus the comments and likes, but you do bring up a good point of like what happens when someone is just not a nice person and wants to write something that's not appropriate.
Right.
But I think that's something that Twitter has to deal with as well. And if this is positioned as like, okay, well, this is the good news that we're featuring and curating and creating, and then what's up to the social aspect is more on the users, like I don't want to be naive in thinking that no one will do that. They definitely will, but definitely something I should give some thought to and see if there is a way to prevent that.
Yeah, it's an absolute challenge, because good news is also very subjective. Something that I find very good could be completely devastating to somebody else, and vice versa. So things like this are a big challenge, but if someone can solve it, it could be a huge opportunity that hasn't been tapped into yet.
Definitely. Like maybe it's something where like AI can detect terms that aren't nice, right? Like just moderate out those words, but then it's like, where do you cross the line of censorship at the same time? It's very messy.
It is.
But you know what's not messy? Stacks and Adobe XD.
Oh, look at you.
That segue. So here I have my news card. I know that I'm going to want a date and a title. So the reason I want to turn on stacks here is because now what I can do is, let's say I want the date at the bottom. All I have to do is click and drag, and it's going to keep that spacing, which in our case is 8 points. Mm-hmm. So that is awesome. Next up, let's go ahead and create a repeat grid. Good old repeat grid here.
Gotta love those repeat grids.
I find myself wishing that we had repeat grids and other design tools. Like I was in Illustrator the other day, and I'm like, if only we had repeat grid in Illustrator.
I know. I'm in Photoshop once in a while, and I'll just press like Command R and nothing happens. Like, why isn't this happening? But then I remember I can open up my Photoshop documents in XD and make all the repeat grids, and life is good again. Put that on Good Place.
Life is best when you are working with repeat grid. Like, where's that shirt? Someone make that shirt. Okay, so next up, since we have repeat grid all wired up, I'm just dragging in these text files. So I planned ahead and thought of some fun featured news headlines, and instead of me having to like go into each card and click 1,000 times to change the copy, I'm just gonna go ahead and drag one text file, and XD is smart enough to realize the order in which they go.
Look at that.
So here we have, oh, sorry, say again?
No, I just said, look at that. I mean, it still blows my mind that repeat grids was in the original version of XD back in, when it was a demo, 2015.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, we're gonna add in some more fun imagery. Let's see, homepage, featured, and these are all from Shape.so as well. Just brought into Adobe Illustrator to use our brand colors. Now we have our images. Last step, let's go ahead and create a drop or some sort of gradient going on, because no one can read that white at all. So let's call this gradient.
Yeah, it's one of the tricky things about working with images. Even though they definitely add some pop to your designs, working with the wrong images or working with different text layers can be very difficult to read. But what Kate's doing is perfect.
Maybe like keep that good place blue, right? So my only problem is it does look a little bit muddy, but in this case, I'm willing to sacrifice some muddiness and able to make it readable and accessible. So let's call it there. That looks pretty good. All right, moving right along here, we have our repeat grid, and I'm actually gonna break the repeat grid. I'm so sorry, repeat grid, but the reason I'm gonna do that is because we've got our good old buddy stacks now. And so I'm gonna go ahead and group my news cards and call this news cards, plural. And I'm gonna enable stack. And Adobe XD is once again smart enough to recognize that this is a horizontal stack. And so if I decided that I wanted inspiring businesses started from home to be first, all I have to do is click and drag. Like, that is saving so much time. Like, if you're thinking on a larger scale where you have a 4x4 grid of different cards like this and your team decides that they want to reorder it, now it's as simple as click and drag, which is pretty sweet. And then if that wasn't cool enough, I sound like a salesperson, I promise I'm not. We can go ahead and enable horizontal scrolling. So with just that one click of a button, now we can go ahead and scroll.
Fancy.
Before we would have to use masks and drag for that, and now it's just right here at our disposal.
Yeah, and hopefully one day we'll have some sort of like hybrid of repeat grids and stacking as well. I would love to be able to just drag around cells in a repeat grid, or if it's a stack, then bulk drag in images and text files into that as well.
Definitely. Okay, so just to wrap up what we've done here so far, we've learned about repeat grid, we learned about stacks, both vertical and horizontal. We've learned about scrolling, dragging in bulk text files, and all of that in under, I don't know, like 15 minutes, probably like 10 minutes. So we're making good time, everybody.
Yeah, and stacks and scroll groups are fairly new. They came out July, I want to say. I've lost track of the months lately, but I think it was in July, so not too long ago. And if you haven't used stacks or scroll groups yet, letsxd.com has all the information on that. You can check that out.
Cool. I did want to ask the chat really quick what we should name our featured good word for this stream. So this is essentially going to be a blog or basically an article about just something really, really cool that's happened globally or in the community. So if you guys want to share something good that's happened to you or something good that you've done, I would love to feature it. So make sure to leave us some suggestions. Okay, before I move on, I do want to get a quick check on time for where we're at with the Behance review.
Yeah, we have about 6 minutes.
Okay, cool. I think that leaves us with just enough time to start on the community section. So here we are. the most, top level. This is all one giant scroll. But what I'm going to want to do is let's go ahead and hide our tab bar, and we're going to just elongate this really quick so we have some space to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then take this featured text.
Val says for the copy of the good word, Florida man behaves himself. That's wonderful.
That's the most surprising news I've ever heard.
Yep.
Okay, let's do community news. And then this I want to have act similarly to Twitter. So.
And do you envision this as just a mobile app, or do you want a web experience, or what other platforms would this be available on?
Right now I am just envisioning it on mobile, but I could see it potentially growing to be web-based. That could be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I think of other social media apps, I think of, someone's icon, their username, and then what they wrote. So let's go ahead and start with a good old-fashioned user icon. Want to make sure this is, let's do 50 by 50 and see if that's too big.
Looks like a good size.
That's a good size, you're right. And this is where I actually want to talk about another amazing artist. At the start of the stream, I said that I didn't want to use, or I didn't want to allow for any updates or any, no uploading of like your own pictures, because I want to stray from that. So I came across this designer, Amrit, and he does toy faces in 3D. And so I think that these are so fun. They're inclusive. They're exactly the feel that I'm going for a good place. And so I went ahead and got his extended license. And I hope that you guys can help me pick maybe your top 8 that we'll use as like an MVP version for picking your avatar. Oops, wrong link. We'll get there in just a second. But if you guys want to show Amrit some love, here's his Behance. So talented. So excited to get to use these in my projects. Just so dope.
I'm gonna have to check this out. I love, if anyone watches my streams, I love like bright, colorful images, especially when I'm working with images of people, and this is perfect. I'm gonna have to probably pick these up later today.
Yeah, so good. Okay, so I've already downloaded some, so if you guys want to help me pick your favorites, Kevin, you get to pick yours specifically since you're the star of this experience. So here they are. Illustrations, toy faces. Let's do some colored ones. Let's start with Howard. Howard, which one do you want to be yours?
Oh gosh, they're so small I can't even see them.
Can I zoom in? There we go.
Let's see. Oh boy, there are so many of them. Which one looks like me?
Which one looks like Howard, guys? If only there was one where they were like holding boba, I'd be like, that's definitely Howard.
Oh, yes. I want to say probably the blue background in that row that you're on now. Like the third from the last, that one maybe.
Perfect. I'm just gonna drop these in homepage. And then I'm gonna pick out maybe one more just for right now. Kevin says, oh my gosh, so many choices. I know, it's almost overwhelming. Actually, one more really quick. Kevin, I feel like you want 49.
Which one is 49? Oh, yes, that hair.
The best possible one. Okay, cool.
That one's perfect.
All right, so we're logged in as Kevin. So this is gonna be Kevin's picture.
Bam.
Right up there in the top corner. Let's make it a little bigger. Right there is fine, actually. And then for someone, let's make this Howard's picture. Actually, I would usually wait to do this for repeat grid. So maybe we'll wait until we're done with the structure
that makes
first.
sense.
Let's name this icon. And then let's give it a fill really quick so I don't lose it.
Mike says, I have one of those wigs. You might be
We should
referring
all
to
have
the rainbow
wigs.
one. I need one of those.
For quarantine, guys, let's just jump on a giant Zoom call and wear those wigs and drink coffee and catch up.
Yeah.
So let's see. Kevin, what was Kevin's? Kevin Lee. Wait, no, this was supposed to be you. Sorry, I'm getting all mixed up. So Howard Pinsky is what we want.
Yep.
Maybe make this about 8. It's a little big. Let's make it 16. For mobile, you don't want to go beneath 16 pixels if you can help it. Like there are some things you can get away with, like labels are fine to go 14 if you really have to. I would stress even maybe don't go below 15, maybe use 15. But for general, body text on mobile should be about 16 to be accessible. Let's make sure this is our text color. Maybe it should be that instead. Okay, and then after that, Howard, what would be a good thing that you share with Goodplace? Maybe.
Oh boy. Now you're putting me on
sorry,
the
just
spot.
like totally putting you on the spot. I'm sorry.
I don't know. It's a lot of pressure.
Maybe instead for this, let's make it myself, and then I could say.
Lead the way, Kate.
I got you. 17. I'm like so specific about these things. Sorry. I bought Howard Boba for being such an amazing Adobe XD host.
Yes. Are you going to ship
Something-
the boba to me?
Yeah, just throw it really hard in your direction. It'll make it there eventually. Okay.
Oh, we are at time for the portfolio or the artist spotlight. So let's take a really quick break and we'll hop over to Behance. We're going to take a look at an artist right now. His name is Jeff Trojek. He's from London, Ontario. And again, if anyone wants to nominate somebody for Artist Spotlight, there is a tab at the top right-hand corner of Behance. Go ahead and click that and you can find out all the information. I see Kermit the Frog.
I mean, look at the level of detail. Like if we open this up, oh my gosh. The
Digital
fibers. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I keep cutting you off.
No, it's fine. I keep cutting you off. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, this is so impressive. It looks like he's using iPad Pro, Apple Pencil, Adobe Photoshop Sketch. Wow. Like, I look at this and think, I initially thought it was a 3D render. That's how detailed it was. Like, you can see each fiber, the creases in his clothes. That expression is just so relatable, you know?
That's very impressive.
And then you mentioned Kermit the Frog.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Okay, so you did like a little Muppets theme. That's cute.
He's such a talented artist across all different styles too, because we see with Kermit and the other Muppet, you've got like this almost 3D rendered look, but then you have this one of, I assume to be maybe Albert Einstein, I don't know. But it just shows how talented he is with different, across different mediums. So it's like he understands his values really well between his blacks and whites, how to shade, how to highlight. So it's this mix of traditional art with a little bit more like a modern flair up here. This is so cool.
I couldn't even do
Steve
like
Jobs.
1/10 of this. I'm so useless when it comes to illustrations and things like that.
Oh my gosh, same. Just like, look at the rim of the glasses too. It's so thin, but he knows how to highlight so well that it doesn't get lost at all.
Yeah.
Let's see what else here. Is this like photography? It says light. Oh, it's a painting.
Oh my gosh.
This is
This
wild.
is a painting?
I thought it was like a picture of, somewhere by the beach, maybe like the sand, but
Yeah.
it's so good.
That detail's insane.
I mean, look at how the values just like blend seamlessly across. You have this super bright white for the light over here, and then it gradients to this like perfect shadow tone. I wonder how he did this.
I wonder how large that is too. Is that a digital painting or is that... No, it's acrylic.
Jeez.
Wow. Crazy.
I tried to pick up painting over quarantine and it did not go well at all.
Yeah, I don't bother anymore. I'm so useless with that sort of stuff.
My problem is I get impatient, so I just want to like throw paint everywhere and blend, and it ends up looking like a mess.
Well, then again, some artists have sold really scrappy looking things for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Look at that banana that sold that was duct taped to a wall.
Didn't
Like,
someone
if
take it
they
off
can
and
do
eat
it. Well, yeah, someone ripped it off the wall and ate it. I don't know if that was a publicity stunt or that was just some troll, but that was great.
Yeah, this is so impressive. If you guys, you guys are watching this on Behance, go give him a follow, give him some love. This is such amazing talent right here.
Yep.
So, shout out Jeff. You're amazing. Your artwork is phenomenal.
It's good stuff. Yeah, if you need inspiration, go to Jeff's profile and soak it all in.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Great work, Jeff. So we do have a little bit of time left. Let's hop back over to your XD file and keep going.
All right. So here I am. I'm making a post about I bought Howard Boba bought Howard Boba for being such an amazing Adobe XD host. Gonna make sure these are stacked properly. And maybe I just want to keep it that simple. Like I'm still toying with the fact of if I want following capabilities or if that defeats the purpose.
Yeah, it might.
Because it's like, why would you follow someone if you can't specifically like interact with their stuff? Right? So maybe not. Maybe we save that for another app. Last thing I want is a little line just to kind of separate things. So we make it right here. And use our lightest gray. Make sure multiples of 8. I'm so bad at math, but that would be 16, 15.5 rounds up. And call this divider. And then I want to group all of this together. Let's call this social post. And now we can do a repeat grid.
You didn't boop.
Down. Huh?
You didn't boop. You got to boop when you do the repeat grid. It's a rule.
I feel like this happened last time as well. And like, I thought that you would boop.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
And then we had that back and forth of like when to boop.
Yep.
But you're right. I should remember to boop. I can't forget to boop in front of Howard Pinsky. That's like a crime. Okay. Let's go ahead and drag in some images. Let's pick out a couple more toy faces so we have something to work with. Let's see, good place. I always forget where I save stuff, which is not
all
good.
the time I do that.
All right. Let's see. I'm really liking this girl. I like the all black. Let's get another
Someone's asking,
guy.
how do I post my artboards into Behance Do I use one page on all artboards, or can I add multiple artboards on a Behance post? So, I mean, a lot of that depends on personal preference. You know, when I'm creating my Behance case studies, I just uploaded one, I think last week or the week before, and it was done on one massive artboard. It was like, I don't know, 7,000 pixels long or something like that. But I do know a lot of people who break it up into sections and design them on various artboards, and you can export them all at once. Completely up to you. Of course, the longer your artboard, the larger the file size, so you might want to keep that in mind. And of course, if you want to break it up and put videos or GIFs in between those, then you'll have to break those artboards up, but a lot of that's completely personal preference. I know, Kate, you've done a lot of case studies on Behance, especially when you were doing the daily challenges. Did you create one long image, or did you break them up into several?
So that's something that when I was first getting started with, I would do a lot of separate images. And then I was exploring Behance, and I saw a lot of people create really cool projects where they did the one long artboard, and it looked so good. So I tried it out. Something that I worry about there, though, is let's say you have an artboard that's like 8,000 pixels long, right? And you have a really big project, and you just dump that in as one file size or one file. It's going to take longer to load, right?
Yep.
So like, I don't want someone to go to my Behance and have to wait 2 minutes for a file to show or an image to show. So
yeah,
that's where I think it's like, it's dependent on how big your project is, so how big the image would need to be. But yeah, totally personal preference, I think.
absolutely.
Okay, Howard, I'm putting you back on the spot. What's something that you would want to write about?
I guess I can just bounce off of yours and maybe just like received and drank boba from Kate or something like that.
Perfect. All right, if you want to get in the chat right now, everybody, and write something that you would want to post about in Good Place, let us know. Let's see.
I know Val earlier had the thing about the Florida man, but that's more of like the headline, right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Is there something
Val
we
would
could
probably
like
have something about
spin?
something, I don't know, Sith related, or met Kylo Ren or something like that.
Let's run with that. I met Kylo Ren. What else could I add to that, do you think?
I don't know. These are hard to do on the spot.
Yeah, so actually, I don't usually opt for lorem ipsum. I prefer to use placeholder text that's a little bit more relevant to what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just leave it lorem ipsum, and then we can retype ours. So oh wait, no, because that's the master. Okay, you know, we're just gonna leave it as lorem ipsum, and this is something we can revisit tomorrow once we actually have the copy that we're gonna use. So to take a quick look at what we've done so far, let's bring our artboard back up. It was like, oh no, because I need to leave space for the tabs.
Kevin says, just listen to Lady Gaga for 3 hours. Mood fabulous.
That's what I'm gonna do right after this stream. It's another reason I love the iPhone frame that Adobe XD provides, because when you're working with scroll groups and you need to elongate your artboard and you forget where to snap it back to, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we've done so far for our homepage. At least we've created this awesome scroll group for featured news, and then now we have our community news.
Fancy.
So everything is functional, everything's fancy. All right, looks like we have about 10 minutes left or so.
Yeah, and I just love the fact that we can now have multiple scroll groups on a single artboard. Like you were talking about earlier, previously, for that horizontal scrolling, you would have to have multiple artboards, you know, potentially like 5 or 6, depending on how many cards you had inside of that. But now it's just all on one, and you can horizontal scroll, vertical scroll. If you had a map, you can scroll in both directions, which is always fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think that it's like, that's where I don't know where to draw the line of like, there's all those apps where you can create those animations in like those third-party plugins and that interaction. But with what Adobe XD is coming out with, like it's all available in Adobe XD already. The only things we talked about earlier was like the ability to click on an input field and type in your response or things like that.
Yep.
Okay, let's just add some finishing touches here. Let's add a settings or like a gear icon in the top right hand corner. We can do that with our handy plugin. I'm such a plugin advocate because it makes my life so much easier. But
plugins are great.
Right? Save me so much time. So using icons for design, let's type in gear. Okay, let's type in settings. Cannot type at all. Okay, so the style of icons I'm working with is this mix of, it's like a hybrid of filled in borders. So, this is something I didn't show you guys, but this is all wired up and ready for the next pages we work on.
Oh, fancy.
So, yeah. I want to
Peter
find
says, look at
an
that grid
icon.
alignment. Beautiful. Yeah, Peter, you'll be happy to hear that Kate's using the lovely 8-pixel grid.
Should we do, let's do like a border icon. That's fine. And then I want to make sure this is the same color as the icons down here. So I'm just going to eyedropper tool it. It's a little bit of a hacky way to work around it, but it works for what I need it to. We'll notice the border size is increasing because it's SVG, so we can just adjust that. And then I want to make sure I'm working in the right group. So let's turn iPhone elements off. Name this gear. Do you ever have a hard time naming your layers? Because I had no idea what to name like this top bar, so I literally just named it top bar.
I do that all the time. Top like bar, bottom bar, middle bar. Hey, it works.
Right?
Until you move it around and then it's like not the top bar anymore.
Right. So I want to make sure these are all perfectly center aligned. Make sure I have the right things.
Maybe someone can create a plugin that automatically names groups based on the elements, uses like artificial intelligence and machine learning to analyze what's inside of the group and just gives it a name.
True. But then like would we all end up with the same layer names and wouldn't, like, I think it'd be great, but at the same time like it'd be kind of boring. Because then like every design file you work on is going to look exactly the same structure-wise.
It could be. It's
like a bittersweet, good and bad thing, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure that gear is all the way to the right-hand side. Okay. That's like pretty good. I also want to take the opportunity really quick to touch on touch targets. So this gear is 22 pixels wide and like the height is 22 pixels. That's not really like the most accessible. We want to make sure we're somewhere around like 44 pixels. So what I'm going to do is at the center of the icon, or as close as I can get, I'm going to hold down Alt Shift and drag out to about, let's call it, I said 44, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was 40, maybe 34. I don't know.
Anywhere between like 40 and 45 is pretty standard, I think.
Okay. Let's run with 40 then. And we're going to just drag this touch target to the bottom and then group it and just call it gear. And the reason I'm doing that, it probably doesn't seem that important, but if and when I were to hand this off to a developer, those are things that he or she would notice and they would know to include in development.
Yeah,
so
and it can also help with your designing as well. If you're working with like very small stroked-based icons, sometimes they can be a little bit tricky to select. But if you put like a a 45 pixel box behind it, even if it's invisible, all of a sudden your touch target to actually grab that layer becomes much larger and easier to select.
Definitely. So actually, if I were to show you guys how this looks down here, it follows the same principle. Clicking is hard sometimes.
Clicking is hard.
Right. So the way that I have this set up is, since it animates between filled and stroked in each different state. So here's my tabs container, and I have my home state, new state, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And then in each folder, I have my filled icon and my outlined icon. And then in each of those icons, I have the touch target defined as well.
Yep.
So pretty good structure for, you know, if and when you're ever designing a tabs navigation bar. It's pretty good structure.
Yeah, and just a very quick pro tip for anyone who might be watching. I know a lot of people question sometimes, you know, how do I get a specific element inside of a group that's inside of a mask, that's inside of a scroll group, which kind of Kate has structured right now. And, you know, by default, when you click on something, it selects the topmost layer, and then you can double click to go in and in and in and in. Just keep double clicking, right? But also, if you hold down your command key or your control key, it'll dive straight into the parent of that group. So if you have a mask, for example, if you hold command or control and you click on an object inside of the mask, it'll just ignore the parent and go straight into the child. It's a bit strange when we use like parent and child in conversations like that.
It is, right? Because it just sounds weird if you don't initially understand what nesting is.
Yeah.
Or what to call those things in nesting.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take the last 10 minutes to kind of just wrap up what we've created here today. So if I were to open, where is it? Good Place Final. So earlier at the start of this stream, well, actually, let me talk. If you're just now joining for the last 10 minutes, we've been focusing on creating an app that's all about making other people feel good, making yourself feel good. And that's done by sharing good news, whether it be, you know, on a global scale of news that you saw from another, you know, news source, or something simple in your community. Like, I didn't have the energy to make dinner after such a long, hard day at work, and my neighbors made me dinner. Just like stuff like that. But
I wish
also,
my neighbors would make me dinner.
Right? I'm such a bad cook. I wish anyone would make me dinner.
That's true.
Anyways. So on that note, though, when you're making social posts in Good Place, we really want to highlight the inability to like or comment on posts. And that's because we don't want to promote only sharing good things to see a reaction, right? Like, you should be doing good things because it makes you happy to do so, and you genuinely want to help other people. So that's where this social app is just a little bit different.
Yep.
What we created at the start of this stream was an onboarding experience. So if I were to click on create an account, you can go through each different input field. So first name, email, username, and finally password. And the reason that we broke it up like that instead of just including all 4 input fields is we wanted to make sure that our message of like wanting to make people feel comfortable and come to a safe space continues throughout every single stream of the experience. So we wanted to just make this a more conversational experience of the app. And then in the second half of the stream, we got through, that was in this one.
Oh no, you'd think your audio cut out. We've lost audio. Uh-oh, nope. I'm not sure if the chat can hear. I can't hear anything. Maybe it's just on my end. That is a possibility. So maybe if the chat is able to hear, you can just keep talking, and I guess we'll see what the chat says in about 10 seconds or so. Let me switch back over to us and see if that works at all. And let me see it. Let me just make sure that the audio settings on my end are looking okay. Otherwise, the chat will definitely Let us know what's going on. Yeah, I hear nothing from you. Val can hear. Val can hear me. I'm not sure if... Nope, can't hear Kate. Oh no. Well, thankfully we're nearing the end. We have about a minute left. But I guess before we wrap things up, yeah, they can hear me but not you. I'm sorry, Kate. I don't know what's going on. But I do want to showcase one quick thing. Let me hop over to Twitter for a second. I move this over here. Make this a bit larger. Nope, nothing yet. I'm going to hop over to my screen just for a second, just to show you all a quick sneak peek at something that's coming in this month, actually. We have, well, there's Kate. Let's see if I can find the post. I know it's here somewhere. Well, we have a feature called Multiple Flows coming, which will allow you to create multiple flows, as the name suggests, inside of your XD project. So you can have a web flow, a mobile flow. You can have lots of different things. You'll be able to select artboards all at the same time. Oh, is this the one? Yes, this is the one. Here, I'm going to play this. There you go. All right, so that's coming in August, this month, and I wish I can bring Kate back into here, but you know we're on the big screen now, but no audio from Kate, I don't think. No. Oh. Well, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll definitely sort out the audio issues. And a big thank you to everyone who has joined us. Peter Del Tondo is coming up in just a few minutes with the Daily Creative Challenge. And I will see you all later. Kate, any last silent words? All right, see you later, everyone.